Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
Another great episode of DubCast coming down the pike. As a quick reminder for those listening at home, twice a month we'll hop in the studio to chop it up with one of the industry's finest handicappers. Today is no exception. We are absolutely thrilled to have in studio today the Prince of Player Props himself. Follow him on Twitter at BD Sportings. Big Delivery Sports, hailing from the Bay Area. BDS, say hello to listeners at home. So excited to have you on the show today.
Appreciate you having me. Glad to be here. Always happy to help. Clients and all. Glad you can have me.
BDS, our listeners at home may not know this, but you were kind of one of the founding fathers of Dub Club in kind of that first batch of cappers who started using the software back in October. How did you come to hear about Dub Club? And more interestingly, what's your kind of origin story as a handicapper? How did you get into this wacky world of Twitter and giving out your plays to following base 5,000 strong on Twitter?
When I first started, everything I was doing was free. Wanted to be able to build up a good reputation, gain some trust out there. So at a certain moment, after a full year, I began selling picks. And then at the point you guys came along, I just noticed there was a different aspect. We were able to reach clients, different promotions we were able to give. So I was just looking at the ground up, how you guys would show me examples of what you were putting together. At the time, it didn't really feel as though there were many outlets of picks being delivered to clients in a text message form. Me, myself, I do a lot of things through another page. I just post the picks there. So in this aspect, I was always welcome to upgrade in a sense. And with you guys in the background doing all the work that you do, it makes life easier for me, easier for the clients. So I can appreciate that to the fullest. And when I first started, I wanted to say, I didn't always do player props. I used to take a lot of trips to Reno. Reno's about 3.5 hours away. Gambling is not, sports betting isn't legal in California. So I have to make the trips to go to Reno, maybe with friends, maybe with myself. So there was a good 2-year period. I wasn't working. I was just going to Reno 2 to 3 times a week, depending on how I'm feeling, how the slate looks. Baseball was big for me at the time. So if I was just doing in-plays on baseball, I wanted to be able to leave in the morning, get there in the afternoon, spend the whole day there. Day goes well, maybe want to stay another day. Just depends how the week goes. And gradually, you have your ups and downs, but it builds other than character. You eventually have a certain way of how you want to go about things, what to stay away from, what makes you feel comfortable, what scares you. I can be superstitious, so if I'm feeling like, oh, this may not be the day I want to hop on this, or I think that somebody may come into this game that I don't feel comfortable with betting, I will always try to, narrow the guessing part of the aspect of everything. I don't want to feel like I'm guessing. I want to feel as though I have an advantage. I'm giving people picks as an advantage. So before I was ever giving out picks, I was just losing and winning myself before I ever felt like I could help other people.
Such an interesting. Easton, go ahead.
You're all good. I think that's just a great way to go about it. I think, there's a lot of, superstition that goes into betting and picking games. I just wanted you to kind of, we know you're a big basketball guy, love the NBA, love NCAA basketball. So take us a little bit through your approach to capping games, kind of what goes into basketball versus maybe hockey. Because we know you do a little bit of NHL too. I'd love you to just run through kind of. We'll talk about player props probably in a little bit. I think that's obviously where you're the king, but even just talking through games and stuff, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your approach to it.
Going to Reno, they didn't have player props, so I would go through money lines, totals, things of that nature. You have to get good at certain things before you want to move on and try to improve in other aspects of gambling in general. And so at the time, I was playing a lot of basketball, high school, went to a community college, was about to go play for a team in the Philippines. I'm Black and Filipino, by the way, so, a little mixed boy. So I was like, I gladly want to go out there. So during my senior year, I had a tear in my LCL. So it was just a little bit small decision. It was like, you know what, I have no problem staying here with the family, just living the life here instead of trying to pursue my career in some type of way in basketball. So I played for fun. And in the recent years, I have let myself get away from that, gain some weight, finally getting back into it. But when I make my player prop bets, I like to view things as though a game is a matchup between this player and this player who can take advantage of certain matchups. If I feel as though maybe Kevin Durant is going to have a good night and he doesn't have somebody of Siakam's height in front of him, and maybe he'll end up coming off of screens and having smaller defenders below him. He loves to tell people right now that they're too little, because in a lot of senses, they really are too little for him. So if we're riding a hot hand, or if we're feeling like, oh, this guy has a special occasion or special reason or moment why he may show up bigger today than other days, I will gladly ride those little situations. Can't always ride those hot hands. I do like to look at numbers. Some guys play bad in certain areas you might want to stay away from. So I just try to blend it all together, but not force too much of my plays to be based off of the numbers per se.
Your approach is so interesting and unique, and it's clear you're almost like a scout, right? Like, you know the game super well. And the other component of kind of why I think player props and basketball go so well together is because, right, it's a matchup league. And it's a players league. Unlike football, unlike MLB, like any given day, the effort level of a given player varies wildly. And that's why NBA playoffs is such a different animal, because guys are locked in on defense for 48 minutes.
100%.
What are kind of like some interesting storylines you track, or maybe some anecdotes in the NBA or college hoops where you've seen something going into a game, a tell, or a storyline that maybe isn't baked into a player prop in Vegas, but as kind of almost like a scout, this guy's about to go off? Give us some color there.
I want to say the most recent one I had was a Houston game. They had a player named Tajay Moore. So they, at first, they had their matchup with Illinois. He had a great game. I watched the game. I'm like, okay, I like this. I'm going to keep following this guy. He seems like, other than athletic, he's almost like the heart and soul. I'm in the Bay. We're Warriors guys. So it's like Draymond in a sense. If you don't have Draymond, at some points it feels like there's something missing, that if we had that piece, he could take us to the next level. And it almost felt like that's what Moore was for Houston. And so when they played Arizona, they were able to get by even though he was in foul trouble. And so even though they won that game, Kelvin Sampson, who they were talking about on the broadcast about almost being a second father to him in a sense, because I guess he had a troubled childhood. Kelvin Sampson brought him in. So he appreciated everything Kelvin Sampson did for him. His mom looked at this coach as a second father for her son. So at the end of the game, even though he was in foul trouble, he really wasn't a factor, even though he was in foul trouble. But when he went into the game, it was almost as if he wasn't noticeable. And that's what Kelvin Sampson brought up at the end of the Arizona game, called him out, knew that this is a player I can give constructive criticism to. He will not take it personally. He will take it as motivation, and he'll come out even better. And so they had the game against Villanova. He ends up leading the team in scoring. And if you watched his game, he isn't necessarily an efficient shooter. Edwards is their main scorer. He was 1 for 10. It was a sad night to watch for Houston. I had them plus 3,300 to win it all. So, they hit a couple more threes to go as well. But at the same time, he came out. He did what he could, led them in scoring, cashed his prop easily. Points went over. Rebounds went over. He even took an alternate rebound prop where it was plus 2,200 for him to get over 9.5 rebounds. Got that last rebound. He even forced a steal with about 6 seconds left to create the situation for him to get the rebound. And so it's things like that. You can always appreciate the guy's effort, especially in that time. Playoffs come around, NBA guys, you can expect 1 through 5 more effort overall. Some guys want to just chill. You see in a lot of guys towards the end of the season sit out. You got to be on the lookout, like, oh, I don't want to give out a play here. Next thing you know, he's not playing. Maybe you give out this play. Maybe it's not as good because certain players on his team aren't going to be there. It all depends sometimes.
How different is NBA versus college hoops for you? When you break down tape, when you're looking at a game, I mean, I'm a Bulls guy. I watch the Bulls pretty much every time they play. I watch NBA regularly. I really only watch college hoops in March, and like it hurts my eyes sometimes.
100%.
Because obviously the level of play is not the same. It's a different sport, right? So how do you kind of bake that into your analysis process? Because I mean, I don't need to tell you this. You went 8-1 yesterday in college and NBA, so you know what you're doing.
We all
in
know
both.
that.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Yeah, so when it comes to college, especially during this time, this is almost the only time I'm taking player props in general. Because throughout the season, you won't really find the opportunity to bet player props so often. So if I'm doing college, I'm doing money lines, I'm doing totals. And then NBA props are always available. I can just focus on props within the NBA aspect. But in college, it's always like you want to be able, if you watch as many games as I feel like I do, you want to be able to take advantage of smaller schools. You know, if you're not dealing with big blue bloods, you're able to go look into like a Utah Valley. They have a guy who's like one of the leading rebounders in the country. If they have a matchup to another small school where it's like, oh, okay, that team doesn't necessarily have the star that this small school has, you know that there's an advantage in this point of view. If they have a balance of we can all have the same guard matchups, your guard is as good as my guard, but my big is superior to all of your bigs, and he will dominate. And he's viewed as an NBA prospect. You might want to be able to strike there. NBA realm, this guy's fighting for contracts nightly. So even if somebody hits the bench, somebody sits out, you know, someone else is going to play for their job and do their best. Even if it may not add up to going up against stopping LeBron or stopping Karl Anthony Towns, you know, you'll get some maximum effort. You want to be able to like strike in those situations. I remember in January and February, I was hitting Anthony Simons pretty hard because he exploded. As soon as Damian Lillard went out, and me and a lot of friends, we like to collect sports cards. Not just sports cards, but sports things in general. So it's like, I was following him. He's the only black and Filipino boy in the league up until Jalen Green recently got drafted. So I'm looking at my kids. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe someday you want to look up to something. This is what we got over here, leading, showing the way. And Simons had some crazy games, game winners against the Grizzlies. He was going crazy, putting up 30 plus. And there was a stat where it said he was the quickest to like 500 threes in the shortest amount of games started. And he would hit 45% of his threes. And he doesn't just like spot up and shoot. He's coming off the dribble. He's almost doing what Curry is doing, just without all of the running around as much. And so if you want to think long term, there might not be too many players that ever touch Curry's record. You got to shoot a high percentage, high volume. He was doing both. And so seeing that and seeing them, the difference without him on the team, there would be nights he would take the night off and they would lose by 35 plus. It was like night and day. We were like, wow, you're thoroughly impressed. You know, he's in the game. You know, he's going to give his maximum effort. It was his contract year at the same time. So everybody wants to give him the money. Now, of course, they want to pair him with Dame. You don't know if Dame is going to go, he's going to stay, but Anthony Simons is the Trailblazers' future. So it's like he earned everything he's about to be getting.
No, for sure. I mean, honestly, talking about Simons, we're trying to compare him to Steph Curry, and you can't always do that. But, you know, it's fun to look at these players in these moments and see how, again, like you're saying, Dame Lillard gets hurt. You see CJ McCollum get traded. How much does this open the offense up for a guy like Anthony Simons and, you know, some of the other role pieces? But kind of going off of this, again, we know how deep you are into this player prop analysis. When you talk about, again, like you just talked about how the Blazers are a different team with Simons on the court, how do you factor in like the player prop analysis when you're looking into betting sides versus and totals? Because obviously that feeds in to see you have such an idea of how these players are playing. So obviously that's going to feed into how the team's playing.
Yeah, definitely. Sides, it could really depend on lineups. A lot of people like to use Underdog. I've been loving that Underdog, following Underdog on Twitter. They're the quickest. They get out information as soon as possible. So when you find out, for example, Simons isn't playing, and you know he's going up against, I remember there was an instance they went against the Timberwolves and found out he wasn't playing. You can just take full game and almost fall asleep on it and expect it to hit, even when they're struggling. It's just the guys behind. I like to watch, if any game I'm betting, I want to be able to watch and see who's surrounding this player. Why is the team so bad without him? Like, who's coming in for him? So at the same time, if I'm going to take maybe a bench player's props because now that Simons is out, this is his opportunity off the bench to do something great. Or at the same time, I know that they will not be able to score. There was the first game I think he sat out was against the Jazz, and I took their under. They were playing in Utah. I'm taking the team total under. I'm like, oh, the Blazers are not going to score. They end up scoring like 80 points. I was like, it was almost like you could see the correlation be as simple as that in some senses. And a lot of other times, other players can carry the load. And so when Simons would sit out, CJ would carry the load. As soon as they traded CJ, instant, just like downhill from there. It almost seemed as though they were taking on purpose. They shut Simons down the past month because they don't want anything to happen to him. Now he's the future. So if they decide to move on from Dame, it's all Simons from here on out. You just want to be able to not fully. I remember there was a game yesterday. The Nets played the Hornets, and it just seemed as though the Nets were not even trying to score as much. But at the same time, it was Kyrie's first home game. He could be pressing. His shooting percentages were way lower than they have been recently. So just it can vary. You don't want to always expect the most things. I don't always want to ride with the public, right? But sometimes the public can have a good sense of, oh yeah, that's just something we would all like. Why wouldn't that happen, right? So you just got to go with it sometimes.
BDS, you talked a lot about like the imperative of getting information quickly and pushing information quickly. I think the player prop market in particular is known for being extremely volatile and swinging fast. How has kind of Dub Club been a weapon for you, and the kind of feedback you've gotten from subscribers who, you know, when you see a spot to get some value, it's click, text message, go to work. That's a much different experience than trying to sift through the noise of Twitter. What kind of feedback have you gotten, and how has that made you even forge stronger relationships with your clients?
Me personally, I always accept any constructive criticism. Any way that you or my clients feel as though I can get better, I'm all ears for that. If I feel as though a number may move, and clearly I want to get it out the night before, let's post it now. At the same time, my full slate of games may not be ready, but let's get this number before this number moves. That's a great advantage to be able to have. And then a lot of times, sometimes props aren't even available because of people being doubtful. You never know. So whenever I'm able to get a play out as soon as possible, and you want to beat the line movement, never know. Sometimes I like to also expect if a player's going to be out, what that could do for another player's line. So it's like, oh, okay, no Klay Thompson, no Draymond, no Curry, Jordan Poole's night. Why wouldn't it be? Tonight he goes against the Grizzlies. I'm leaning off of it. You know, they could easily get slaughtered and he sits the whole fourth quarter. But then at the same time, they're not in the game at all if Poole doesn't have himself a good night. You got players like Andrew Wiggins having an inconsistent, few months. So it's like you want to lean back off of him. I had a friend tell me he was on Anthony Edwards under yesterday. And we noticed there were some games where Anthony Edwards, he would literally shoot 20 shots. And then all of a sudden there was like a 3-week gap. He was taking 8 to 9 shots. It's like, I've seen certain news come out where sometimes him and his friends get involved in certain prop type stuff. So I get superstitious as well.
Uh-oh. Little Calvin Ridley.
Right? You never know.
Style
so it's like
drama.
Why all of a sudden you have Cat on the side? You know, you could always give the ball to Cat. It's easy to play off like you're not doing anything on purpose. I'm just looking to feed Cat the ball. Why do I need to take 20 shots? Then all of a sudden, so yesterday, going into the first half, he had 3 points against the Celtics. His under's looking great. He comes out in the second half, takes 15 shots, 4 threes. He only took 4 shots in total in the first half. It was unbelievable. He scored 23 points. I was like, wow. Some of these things.
He got word.
Yes. Oh, yeah. It was looking a little suspicious, and all of a sudden, he turned it into something serious. I was like, oh, got to bet that over in play, I guess. You never know.
It's so interesting just hearing you describe all that goes into a slate and then monitoring in game. Everything is so interconnected. And with a game like basketball that is as much of a game of runs in the NBA and up and down, it's the perfect use case to have some real advice, because the props feed the totals. One guy sitting creates opportunity for the next. You can really see the linkages that happen over the craziness that is an 82-game NBA season where, guys go down, unknown people show up and turn into stars in a couple of weeks, and the market is always going to be a bit slow to react to it. So if you can be on the front foot, there's a lot of value to be had.
Yeah, sometimes the way I go about my picks isn't necessarily the same way others do. So at times, I always encourage people, if you're not sure as to why I'm on a pick, feel free to DM me. I can give you explanations. Sometimes I may put 3 plays out and not want to put out 3 paragraphs. So it's like, just understand why I'm going on this. Is there's so many different like aspects I'm looking at it, and I have no worries helping somebody feel comfortable as to why I'm taking it. I have messages, we can go one-on-one about it, but sometimes I may not fully put out a description as to why I'm on each play that I'm on. And I can understand, maybe I haven't gotten too much criticism on that, but I could see where somebody may want to be more informative as to why I'm on a play.
Yeah. No, I think that insight is really interesting, because there's a lot of us that are, again, the casual fans, the casual bettors that are looking for ways to obviously improve, the way that we're, betting on these different games. But not everybody wants to pay for plays. Not everybody's looking to, invest in a guy and follow that guy. But one of the interesting things that you do that I really like is you mix in free plays with your VIP plays. So I just kind of want to know what goes into the free plays versus the VIP plays. Why do you send them out separately, and kind of what's your motive of that for that?
I like to, let's say if I get new followers, somebody who hasn't been around, they don't know what I'm about, they can't trust whether or not I'm gonna win. I know it's a lot of new followers like to do some, what have you done for me lately? So if they follow me and I don't win today or tomorrow, unfollow me, and I understand that. So when I have a full card, for example, of 8 plays, I like to put 3 to 4 plays, let's say on Dub Club, my top like basketball plays. But for free plays, I mix it up. So I'm just like looking like, what can I think will win? But at the same time, if there's a couple plays I have that are like bigger than the average, I won't always put out those big plays as free plays. Those will necessarily you have to pay for. But at the same time, I always want to make a slate where I feel like we're going 8-0, 9-0. I come a half an assist away yesterday from going 9-0. So it's like I want to be able to trust any play I'm putting out would have the same result as if I'm putting out a big play. This little play should hit. This big play should hit. So if I'm just maneuvering through my slate, if there's 8 slate, let's give out 2 plays here. Let's give out 3. Let's show these new followers, okay, he's somebody I can trust. There's a lot of people that I know they don't like to pay. Maybe once in a while they'll throw a tip. They'll just say a thank you. Even thank yous go a long way. I enjoy helping people with the plays from afar. Even when I first started, didn't always expect I'd be able to charge for plays. So at the same time, if I'm helping somebody in some way and they're appreciative of that, that makes me happy. I'm going to work my 9-to-5 job regardless. So at the same time, I'm trying to make myself some money on the side, make you some money, and we can all come together and enjoy it together.
One of the true good guys in the industry, and it's very obvious based on your feed just how much fun you're having doing it and how much I think a subscriber is learning by just your approach. So always fun to chop it up. The one question I do want to ask before we break, you mentioned having Houston future, which was probably pretty juicy as they were in the Sweet 16. Have you started looking at the NBA playoff future market? Anything we should be peeking at? Kind of March Madness is coming to the conclusion. I know I love playoff basketball. Is there anything kind of piquing your interest, or too soon to tell?
Being in the Bay, clearly I was already leaning Warriors. January range.
Yeah.
I had them, threw them in there like plus 425s and whatnot. I've seen lines of move. Let's add to it, right?
Yeah.
It's a couple situations and setbacks, but you have Draymond, and to me, as much as I play, like if I'm spraining my ankle, and even if it's purple and blue, I can still play. I want to keep playing. So when I seen Curry's injury, he goes through a lot of strength training. To me, it almost feels as though the Warriors could win games, lose games here. Their seeding is almost set to me, so they're just resting up Curry for the playoffs in a sense, getting Poole more acclimated into his role. You have Klay Thompson trying to get back into his rhythm. So Klay isn't passing as much in the offense. He almost looks like he's just hunting shots whenever he gets the chance. So if he can get back that consistent hotness and we're able to ride him at some point, that'd be great. Not too many teams. The Grizzlies looking real scary. They don't even have Ja, and all they do is win. So it's like I could roll with them. They're a young team. I think the Bucks could blow through the East. I don't trust Harden and Embiid. The Nets don't even have Ben Simmons like everybody expected they would. So it almost seems like I wouldn't trust me personally. I'm not a Heat guy. That argument they had the other day, but I don't think it'll help them too much. But as deep as the Bucks are, I want the Warriors, but the Bucks probably have some good value at this point for sure.
Love it. All right, well, this was a blast. Special treat to any listener to the show. Punch in promo code BDS DubCast at checkout for 20% off your first month of a Dub Club subscription to BD Sporting's feed. BDS, always fun chopping it up. So much value from your perspective and the way you go about your game. And I'm sure all of our listeners love learning more about the method to the madness.
Appreciate you having me on. Always ready to come join. Always happy to help. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Always feel free to come follow, DM me. Any questions, I'm always willing to answer.
Epic. All right, thanks, BDS.
Thank you, brother. That was awesome.